This is the live podcast with Manuel, living in full expression. Welcome to the live podcast with me, your host, Manuel. Today, we are diving into something that's probably the most frustrating part of personal transformation. In our previous episodes, you've identified your powerful why and you've learned to recognize and handle the resistance. But here's what probably happens. You started strong, you took action, you followed through for a few days, maybe even a few weeks. You felt like you were finally becoming the person you wanted to be, and then you slipped back. You found yourself making the same old choices, falling into the same old patterns, being the same old version of yourself that you were trying to leave behind. And you're wondering, what's wrong with me? Why can't I sustain this change? Why do I keep going back to who I used to be? I just want to let you know that you are not alone. And in today's episode, I'm going to show you exactly how this happens and more importantly, how to make lasting change that sticks. Because the problem isn't your willpower, your motivation, or your commitment. The problem is something much deeper and much more fixable than you think. Now, let me ask you something. Have you ever pulled a rubber band as far as it can stretch and then let it go? What happens? It snaps right back to its original position, right? Sometimes it even goes further back than where it started. Now, this is exactly what happens when you try to change your life. You stretch yourself, you've got new habits, new behavior, new ways of thinking. For a while, you maintain that stretch through pure willpower and excitement. But then life gets stressful, you get tired, and you have a bad day, and like that rubber band, you snap right back to your original shape or original position. Sometimes you even go further backward than where you started, and now you're more frustrated and discouraged than you were before you began. And I call this the elastic band effect. And it's the reason why about 92% of people abandon their goals within the first 3 months. That's if they get to that point. But here's what most people don't understand. The problem isn't that you are weak or lack discipline, because if you do, you won't brush your teeth every morning or have your bath. The problem is that you're trying to change your behavior without changing your identity. You're trying to stretch a rubber band without actually changing what the rubber band is made of. And let me tell you a short story that simply illustrates what I'm trying to say to you. A few years ago, I worked with a client who I will call David. David was a mid-level manager at a tech company. He was making decent money but feeling completely unfulfilled. He had a business idea, a consulting firm, helping small businesses with their marketing, and he was determined to make it work. Now, David did everything right. At least on the surface, he identified his powerful why, which he said was that I want to build something meaningful and have the freedom to spend more time with my family, which is normal for most people who want to build businesses. And he created systems to handle the resistance. He had accountability partners, tracking system, and the whole 9 yards. Now, for the first month, David was on fire. He woke up at 5 a.m. to work on his business before his day job. He was networking, creating content, reaching out to potential clients. He even landed his first 2 clients and made $3,000 in his first month. I was proud of him, and he was proud of himself as well. Everything seemed to be going perfectly. Then month 2 hit, and David started sleeping in occasionally, just this once. He would tell himself, and then he would skip a networking event because he was too tired. Then he would postpone working on a client's project because he didn't have enough time to do it properly. By month 3, David stopped all his marketing activities and was back to his old routine of coming home from his day job and watching Netflix until bedtime. So when I talked with David, he was so devastated. I don't understand, he said. I wanted this badly. I had such a strong why. I knew how to handle my resistance. I even do my resistance audit. But I just went back to who I used to be. Here's what I told David, and here's what I want you to understand. David was trying to build a business while still seeing himself as an employee. On the surface, he was doing business owner activities, but deep down in his core identity, he was still an employee. And employees get told what to do, when to do it, and how to do it. Employees wait for permission. Employees follow instructions. Employees show up when they are supposed to and do what they are supposed to do because someone else is holding them accountable. But business owners create their own structure. They make decisions without permission. They figure things out as they go. They hold themselves accountable because they know that no one else will. So David's behavior were temporarily aligned with his goals, but his identity hadn't shifted. So eventually, his identity won. And this is what I want you to always remember. Your identity will always win in the long run. So let me explain how this works, because understanding this will change everything about how you approach personal transformation. Most people try to change from the outside in. They focus on changing their behaviors, their habits, their actions. And for a while, this can work. You can force yourself to act differently through willpower and discipline. But here is the problem. Every behavior is a vote for the type of person you believe you are. I want to take that again. Every behavior is a vote to the type of person you believe you are. If you see yourself as someone who is not good with money, and then you force yourself to budget and save, there's a constant internal conflict happening. Part of you is taking action, but part of you is thinking, this isn't who I am. I'm not the type of person who is good with money. So eventually, that internal conflict becomes exhausting and you revert back to behaviors that match your identity. But here's the beautiful thing about it. This process works both ways. So every time you act in alignment with the identity you want to have, you are casting a vote for that new identity. You are providing evidence to your subconscious mind that you are, in fact, that type of person. So the key is to start small and focus on identity-based changes, not just behavior-based changes. Instead of saying, I want to lose 30 pounds, you can say, I want to become the type of person who takes care of their body. Instead of saying, I want to build a business, you can say, I want to become the type of person who creates value for others and gets paid for it. Instead of saying, I want to be more disciplined, you can say, I want to become the type of person who keeps promises to themselves. So do you hear the difference? One is focused on outcomes, the other is focused on identity. So when you focus on who you want to become, the behaviors follow naturally. And this is a proof of the law of consistency with human nature. So I want to share with you a framework that's completely changed how I think about personal transformation. And I call it the 3 levels of change. Now let's look at level 1, which is outcome-based change. This is where most people start. You want to lose weight, make more money, find a relationship, build a business. You are focused on changing your results. The challenge with outcome-based change is that you're treating symptoms, not causes. You might achieve the outcome temporarily, but if you don't address the deeper levels, you will eventually slide back. So say it as a farmer who is trying to cut down the branches of the tree because of some defects, and he keeps cutting down the branches, cutting down the leaves. Meanwhile, the problem is from the root. So you have to treat the root problem rather than the outcomes or the fruits or the leaves. So let's go to the level number 2, which is process-based change. Now, this is where you focus on changing your systems and habits. So instead of just wanting to lose weight, you focus on building the habit of going to the gym 3 times a week. So here now you're building a system around that change. Instead of just wanting to make more money, you focus on the process of developing valuable skills. So process-based is much more effective than outcome-based change, because you're focusing on the inputs, not just the outputs. But it's still not the deepest level. And here is the deepest level. The deepest level is identity-based change. This is where real transformation happens. This is where you focus on who you want to become and you let your behaviors flow from that identity. Like I mentioned earlier, there's a law of consistency with human nature. People want to be consistent with who they say they are. So the moment you decide on changing through your identity, it becomes easier. When you make identity-based changes, you are not fighting against who you are. You are not trying to force yourself to act like someone you are not. You are actually becoming that person, one small action at a time. So here is how it looks in practice. Now, an outcome-based statement could be, I want to write a book. That's an outcome. But a process-based statement would be, I'm going to write 500 words every day. So this is a process-based approach. And then identity-based statement is like this. I am a writer and writers write consistently. So you are owning that identity. Another example of outcome-based is I want to start a business, while a process-based is I'm going to spend 1 hour each morning working on business activities. Whereas identity-based sounds like this. I am an entrepreneur and entrepreneurs create values and solve problems. Another example of outcome-based could be I want to get in shape, while the process-based is I'm going to work out 3 times a week and eat healthier meals. Whereas identity-based could sound like I am someone who prioritizes their health, and healthy people make choices that support their well-being. So when you operate from identity, the behaviors become automatic because they are aligned with who you are, not just what you want. So how do you actually make this identity shift? How do you go from being someone who wants to change to someone who actually changed at the core level? I'm going to give you a 4-step simple process that I've used with different clients and that I used myself when I made my own identity shift from someone who had good ideas to someone who actually executes and creates value in the world. Step 1, define your desired identity. So in this step, you need to get specific about who you want to become, not what you want to achieve first, but who you want to be. Ask yourself, what type of person would naturally achieve the goals I want to achieve? If you want to build a successful business, what type of person does that? They are probably someone who is proactive, creative, persistent, value-focused, and comfortable with uncertainty. If you want to be in great physical shape, what type of person does that? They are probably someone who prioritizes their health, make consistent choices, enjoy movement, and see their bodies as something worth taking care of. So write it down and be more specific. Now, step number 2, you need to start gathering evidence. This is the most important step, and it's where most people go wrong. You need to start gathering evidence that you are this type of person, not just that you want to be this type of person. And here's the key. Start with the smallest possible actions. If you want to become the type of person who is disciplined, don't try to overhaul your entire life. Just make your bed every morning and be consistent with that. That's it. One small act of discipline that you can do consistently. If you want to become the type of person who is a writer, don't try to write a novel. Write 1 paragraph every day, or even 1 sentence. If you want to become the type of person who is an entrepreneur, don't try to launch a full business. Just solve 1 small problem for 1 person, even if you don't get paid for it. Every small action is a vote for your new identity, and your subconscious mind is keeping track of all these votes. So here is step 3. Use identity-based language. Start talking to yourself and others using the identity-based language instead of aspiration-based language. Instead of saying, I'm trying to get healthier, you can say, I'm someone who takes care of their body. Instead of saying, I'm working on being more disciplined, you can say, I'm someone who keeps promises to themselves. Instead of saying, I'm trying to build a business, you can say, I'm an entrepreneur who creates value for others. This might feel weird at first, especially if you don't have a lot of evidence yet. But remember, you are not lying. You are declaring who you are becoming, and every action you take in alignment with that identity makes it more true. So here's the 4th and the last step. Scale gradually. So as you gather more evidence and start to genuinely feel like this new identity is becoming real, you can gradually increase the difficulty and the frequency of your identity confirming actions. So the person who starts by writing one sentence a day can actually write 500 words a day, then 1,000 words a day, but they do it from a place of this is who I am rather than this is what I am trying to force myself to do. So the key is to let your identity lead the way. When your actions flow from your identity rather than fighting against it, they become sustainable and even enjoyable. So back to David's story. So let me tell you what happened when David and I walked through his identity shift process. So instead of trying to build a business while seeing himself as an employee, David started focusing on becoming the type of person who creates value for others. And here's how he started building small votes for himself. He started small. Instead of trying to land big clients, he started by answering marketing questions in online forums for free, just 15 minutes a day. He wasn't trying to get clients. He was just being someone who helps others with marketing problems. And then he started writing short, helpful posts on LinkedIn about marketing challenges he saw small businesses facing, not to promote his services, but because that's what someone who cares about helping businesses with marketing would do. Then he started reaching out to small business owners in his network, not to sell them anything, but to ask thoughtful questions about their marketing challenges, because that's what someone who is genuinely interested in helping businesses would do. Do you see what's going on with David? David was gathering evidence that he was a type of person who creates value around marketing. He was voting for his new identity with small, consistent actions. So after 3 months of this identity building approach, something interesting happened. People started reaching out to David for marketing help. They started asking if he offered consulting services. The business opportunities started flowing to him because he had genuinely become the type of person who helps businesses with their marketing. David's business is now generating over $15,000 in a month. But more importantly, it doesn't feel like work to him anymore. He's not forcing himself to do business development activities. He's just being who he is, someone who creates value for businesses through marketing expertise. So that's the power of identity-based change. So I want to give you an exercise to do right after this episode ends, and I call it the identity audit. And it's going to help you identify where there might be misalignment between who you want to become and who you currently see yourself as. So part 1 is your current identity inventory. So take out a piece of paper and write down how you currently see yourself. Don't just overthink it. Just complete these sentences. I am someone who, you fill in the blank space. I am the type of person who, you fill in the blank space. People would describe me as, you fill in the blank space. So write down at least 10 different identity statements. Just be honest. Include both the positive and the not so positive ways you see yourself. Be as authentic as you can. Part number 2 is your desired identity clarification. Now think about your most important goals. For each goal, ask yourself, what type of person naturally achieves this goal? Write down the identity traits, the characteristics, and ways of being that will naturally lead to the outcome you want. Now, part 3 is this. I call it the gap analysis. Look at the difference between your current identity and your desired identity. Where are the biggest gaps? But here's what's most important here. Don't judge yourself for these gaps. Don't make them mean that you are flawed or broken or not good enough. These gaps are just information. They are showing you where you have the opportunity to grow. So don't overthink it. Part 4 is your evidence planning. For each identity gap, ask yourself, what's the smallest possible action I could take consistently that will provide evidence that I'm becoming this type of person? Remember, you're talking about tiny actions. The goal is consistency, not intensity. Never forget that. If you want to become someone who's disciplined, maybe it's making your bed every day. If you want to become someone who is creative, maybe it's writing down one creative idea every day. If you want to become someone who's an entrepreneur, maybe it's solving one small problem for someone else every week. So pick one identity trait and one small action. Commit to that action for the next 30 days. That's it. You're not trying to become a completely different person overnight. Remember this. You're just gathering evidence that you're the type of person who keeps small promises to themselves. So here's what I want you to remember as I wrap up on this episode. You are not stuck with who you've been. Your past doesn't determine your future. Your current identity is not permanent. But lasting change doesn't happen by forcing yourself to act differently. It happens by becoming different, one small action at a time. So every time you act in alignment with who you want to become, you are voting for that identity. And eventually you accumulate enough votes that your new identity becomes your default way of being. Remember, the current identity you have today, you voted for them consciously and unconsciously. And for you to get the desired person you want, you have to consciously build that vote for that new identity. So the person you want to become is not some distant, impossible version of you. They are just the version of you that's made different choices consistently over time. So you can start becoming that person today, not by making massive changes, but by making tiny choices that align with who you want to be. Your identity is not fixed, it's flexible, and you have more power to shape it than you've ever realized. So in our next episode, I'm going to be showing you how to turn your evolving identity into income by leveraging the unique experiences that have shaped who you are. Because once you understand how to become who you want to be, the next step is turning that authentic self into impact and wealth. And until I come your way in our next episode, keep living in full expression.